Okay, so hi everyone. Today I would like to explain chapter 13, Creating an Interactive Classroom from Teaching by Principles book by Douglas Brown. So let's get started. Exploring interaction. How the relationship of interaction to major principle of source language acquisition. Interaction is enhanced by automaticity. As students become engaged with each other in speech acts of fulfillment and agency, their deepest drives are rewarded. Interaction requires the use of self-regulated strategies both to make certain decisions on how to produce or interpret language. Interaction requires the learner to invest in the process of learning and to express one's identity within a language community. And the cultural components of interactive speech and writing require that interlocutors be thoroughly versed in the cultural nuance of language through interaction, and learners realize their agency as they express ideas, thoughts, and feelings, and ultimately work toward improvement within the communities of practice. And then exploring interaction. Interactive teacher. An interactive teacher is by definition one who is fully aware of the group dynamics of a classroom. Teachers can play many roles in the course of teaching. There are teacher as controller. Some control on your part is an important element of structuring a lesson and successfully carrying out interactive techniques. And then teacher as director. Some interactive classroom time legitimately be structured in such a way that the teacher is like a conductor of an orchestra or a director of a drama. And then teacher as manager. This metaphor captures a teacher's role as one who plans lessons and who structures longer segments of classroom time. And then teacher as facilitator. The facilitating roles requires that you step away from the managerial of directive role and allow students with your guidance and gentle prodding to find their own pathways to success. And then teachers as resource. You are available for advice and counsels when the student seeks it, but generally that initiative comes from the student. And the interactive students. One of the ultimate purposes of creating an interactive classroom is to form a community of learners whose interactions serve as a vital motivating force in their language development. Another way to look at interactive students is to recognize and encourage students' roles that contribute to collaborative group interaction. Sarkisian 2010 suggests that functioning in groups is usually successful when the participants do the following. The first, take initiative, for example, such as opinions, change direction, and provide new ideas. And then seek interact information. Ask for facts, solicit opinions, and then questions the group by asking for further clarification and clarify when there is confusion or misunderstanding, and then summarize to put contributions into a pattern. And then initiate the interaction, questioning strategies. One of the best ways to develop your role as an initiator and sustainer of interaction is to develop a repertoire of questioning strategies. How do teacher questions stimulate interaction? Teacher questions give students the impetus and opportunity to purchase language comfortably without having to raise initiating language themselves. It's very scary for students to have to initiate conversation or topics for discussion. Appropriately pitched questions can give more reticent students an effective green light and a structured opportunity to communicate in their second language. And the teacher questions are useful devices to stimulate students to practice syntactic, phonological, and discourse form that are the focus of a lesson. Most of and then a teacher questions can serve to initiate a okay, this is the third one. Okay, teacher questions can serve to initiate the chain reaction of student interaction. One question may be all that is needed to start a discussion. Without the initial questions, however, students will be reluctant to initiate the process. And then teacher questions give the instructor immediate feedback about student comprehension. After posing a question, a teacher can use the student's response to diagnose comprehension difficulties along with grammatical or phonological problem areas in the student's production. And then teacher questions provide students with opportunities to find out what they think by hearing what they say. And they are nudged into responding to questions about, say, reading or a film. They can discover what their own opinions and reactions are. The self-discovery can be especially useful for a pre-writing activity. And then display and preferential question. There are 7 categories of questions, mostly differential, with typical classroom questions word associated with each category. Knowledge questions. This is eliciting factual answer, testing recall, and recognition of information. For example, define, tell, list, and identify. And then comprehension questions. Interpreting and exploring. And then extrapolating. For example, state in your own words, explain, define, locate, and many more. And then application questions, applying information heard or read to new situation. For example, demonstrate how, use the data to solve, and many more. And then inference questions, forming conclusions that are not directly stated in instructional materials. For example, how, why, what do blah 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 mean by, and then analysis questions, breaking down into parts, relating parts to the whole. For example, distinguish, diagram, chart, plant, and many more. And then synthesis questions. This is combining elements into a new pattern. For example, compose, combine, estimate, invent, and many more. And then evaluation questions. This is making a judgment of a good and bad, right or wrong, and according to some set of right criteria and stating why. For example, evaluate, rate, defend, dispute, and many more. Okay, so we move into the myth about group work. The teacher is no longer in control of the class. Students will use their native language, and students' error will be reinforced in a small group, and teachers cannot monitor all groups at once, and some learners prefer to work alone, and different students' learning styles complicate group work. And then about the advantages of group work. Group work is a generic term for a variety of techniques in which 2 or more students are assigned a task that involves collaboration and self-initiate language. Group work generates interactive language. Group work helps to solve the problem of classes that are too large or to over many opportunities to speak by increasing individual practice time. And then group work offers an embracing effective climate. Shy students become vocal participants in the process of forming a community of practice pursuing common goals. And then group work promotes learner responsibility and autonomy. Along with the responsibility of participating, students are developing the kind of autonomy they might not otherwise experience in exclusively whole class work. And then group work is a step toward individualizing instruction. The teacher can recognize and capitalize upon other individual differences, such as age, cultural heritage, and many more, by careful selection of small groups and by administering different tasks to different groups. And then implementing group work in your classroom. We'll now look at practical steps to take to carry out successful group work in your classroom. Classroom language. One of the first considerations in implementing group work is to ascertain that your students have an appropriate command of classroom language with which to carry out the group tasks that you have in mind. And then pair work. The pair work is more appropriate than group work for tasks that are short, linguistically simple, and quite controlled in terms of the structure of the task. Pair work enables you to engage students in interactive communicate or quasi-interactive communication for a short period of time with a minimum of logistical problems. And then group work techniques. The first step in promoting successful group work is to select an appropriate task. In other words, choose something that lends itself to the group process. Lectures, drills, dictations, certain listening tasks, silent reading, and a host of other activities are obviously not suitable for small group work. There are typical group tasks that could be applied in the class. For example, games, role-play simulation, drama, projects, interview, brainstorming, and many more. And then once you have selected an appropriate type of activity, your planning and initiating phases should include the following rules for implementing a group technique. The first, introduce the technique and then justify the use of small groups for the technique, and then model the technique and give explicit detailed instructions, and then divide the class into groups, and then check for clarification and set the task in motion. And then okay, so this is gonna be the implementing group work in your classroom about the monitoring the task. This is the guidelines for monitoring groups. First, actively circulate through the groups, show interest, but remember it's the group, not yours, and offer a few helpful comments, but don't dominate, and maintain a fly on the ball, non-disrupt rule, and keep your own verbal comments to a minimum, and divide your time as equally as possible among the groups, and correct students' error only if an error is causing a crucial misunderstanding or a student's request. And then debriefing processing the task. Almost all group work can be brought to a beneficial close by some sort of full class debriefing once the group task is completed. We have a reporting on task objective. If group were assigned a reporter to present something to the class, or if the task implicitly lends itself to some discussion of the findings of the groups, then make sure that you leave enough time for these to take place. And then focus on form. The debriefing phase is usually an appropriate time for the teacher to call attention to these formal features, reminding students of forms that seemed to cause errors as well as those that students produce correctly. And then establishing effective support. A debriefing phase also serves the purpose of exploring the group process itself and of bringing the class back together as a whole community of learners. Okay, so that's all about chapter 13. Thank you and see you.